Hello.
Hi, Janavi. So I'm sorry. I thought that the for the world of me, I thought you were a Gen Zer, but you turn out to be a closet millennial. God damn it! So I made a mistake in setting up the title of the show. But I think you're much closer to Gen Z than I am. So maybe you can explain this one because what we're going to talk about is why is Gen Z perceived to be so lazy, right? So that's a really tough title to actually look at. It says, I mean, this is in the news in the UK. Maybe India is different, so maybe we can compare and contrast this as well. But it says over right here on LinkedIn that Gen Z shuns full-time office work. What the hell? Okay, only 1 out of 10 people or 10% of young people in the UK want to work in the office full time, and it's a Times survey, so you got to trust that shit. The research highlights a significant shift in working practices since the COVID-19 pandemic, with over half of Gen Z, 52%, okay, admitting that they are lazier than their parents. I don't know what to say. More than 1 in 5, 21% spend more of their working hours at home, and nearly a fifth, that is 17%, want to work from home all the time. The findings also suggest that younger people are in the office less often than their older peers, and then this could impact their future prospects. So that's the story today. And I wanted to actually, now that I've triggered you enough with just the reading of this article, I'm not saying that I'm for it, by the way. I'm sure that there's an alternative story right here. But I wanted to ask you, Janabi, as somebody who probably will represent Gen Z much more than I will. Probably my daughters will represent Gen Z, and they will probably come after me with a lot of weaponry. But but having excluded them, what do you think? What do you think of this article, and what do you think of the reason why this is the way it is?
Okay, so the first question, I completely agree with the article. From what I've seen across corporate and Gen Zs are lazy, no doubt about
Oh
that.
wow! Oh wow! Strong statement. Strong statement.
Yeah,
Okay.
but now I want to talk about why they are perceived as lazy.
Okay.
So, if you take Gen X or Gen Y or Boomers, all of that culture, so there was always a culture of working hard.
Hmm.
Now the culture has shifted from working hard to working smart, and the kind of jobs that we are doing, it's no longer mechanized sorts of jobs, no longer industrial jobs that we are doing. It's more of things are happening in the brain now.
Hmm.
For things to happen in the brain, you need to give it a little of deep work, kind of thing. You just lie down on your sofa and half the things are going on in your mind. You're literally making code in your mind and making campaigns in your mind. Now, for that, if your parent enters the room and you're just lying down on the sofa and staring at the goddamn fan, for them you are lazy.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying is that they're being perceived as lazy, but not necessarily so all the time.
Yeah, I mean, so even if when you even if you're studying or whatever you're doing, right? So there was a culture of working 10 to 15 hours a day. I
Yeah.
myself have heard this, that you're not going to get into a good college because you're not studying 15 hours a day.
Well, you proved them right or wrong.
Yeah. But what's happening is that Gen Zs and the later years of Gen X and whatever, their working styles are so different that they tend to do more work in the lesser time because we have more resources. Earlier,
Hmm.
hard work used to come because you had to pour through 10, 15 books to come to one article. Now, everything is on your fingertips. Now, you can just watch two videos, 30 minutes each. You can just put on the podcast on the TV and just lie down, and thoughts will start coming into your mind. And all you need to do is put half hour of effort on writing the article. Right. So, with ample amount of resources, the hard work that you have to do has taken a lot of backseat. So I think this is one of the reasons that Gen Zers don't even feel the need to put in so many hours of time on
Yeah.
slogging around, because somewhere that kills their creativity.
It's so interesting that you say that because as a Gen Xer who happens to be a professor, if people follow me around in the day and try to figure out whether is this man working or not, they'll see me going on walks and maybe lying down on the sofa staring at the ceiling. But actually my mind is quite active, I would argue. Maybe I'll be right half the time. I won't be right all the time, but I'll be right half the time. And I would say that you're absolutely right. We have moved from whatever economy we were in into this knowledge or information based economy, which means that we need to probably go beyond actually just observing people and their outwardly behavior or their manifestation towards what's really going on in their minds, which is so goddamn difficult to do, right? And here is where probably most of Gen Xers or even baby boomers who are in positions of power are not really understanding this. But what I'm really surprised with was your original statement as a millennial, okay, who thought that Gen Zers are getting away with something which maybe even the millennials aren't.
Yeah, I mean, if I take a personal example, I saw Gen Zs just come in for making a campaign, and their first thought was, "Ladki dal do isme."
Okay, all right.
I was
For
like,
people who do not understand Hindi, there was a
yeah,
very good, yeah. Go on.
yeah, I made a very sexist statement here, and the Gen Zs just used to come in and just used to say that put a pretty face in your campaign and the campaign will work. And
Oh,
most of the time, it actually turned out to be true. So when me and my boss, who's a Gen X, Gen Y category, you can say, so we used to pour in a lot of time trying to understand the cultural nuances of the place, trying to understand what content is happening, and blah blah blah. And that campaign would give us some incremental growth. Now some Gen Z just walks in and says, "Put in a girl," and the campaign skyrockets.
but they have probably understood a hack which maybe you or
Exactly.
the users have not, right? So they are
Yeah.
probably working smarter. I'm not for any
Exactly.
thing and defending sexist remarks, but all that I'm saying, all that I'm saying is that they're clearly looking at hacks. Which the earlier generation people thought that they had to work probably 10 steps in order to reach a goal, and now suddenly they just require one or two steps. So that seems to be the issue. But millennials are still fooled because I think, and here's my take on it. My take on it is millennials go for the experiences, like Gen Xers go for the outcomes,
Yeah.
millennials go for the experiences, and Gen Zers stand for values. And that's a really interesting take. So now the value system, obviously, every generation stands for some value or the other, but Gen Zers' values are very different and perhaps shaped by the pandemic and perhaps shaped by their parents, who happen to be Gen Xers, perhaps, seeing how they struggled during the 2008 recession and so on and so forth. It's quite likely that those things actually impacted the way in which their worldview was shaped, and it's quite likely that they figured out that okay, this shit is not working for me. So clearly, there needs to be a different solution for whatever it is. And who was it that decided that you have to work 8 hours in a day in any case, right? So that was probably Mr. Ford, who was trying to figure out how motor cars, and so it was completely dependent upon the amount of time you worked, right?
Yeah.
Now compare and contrast that to maybe say Elon Musk saying, okay, you got to come back to office. And this, by the way, is going to trigger a lot of people on YouTube and TikTok, because we are not only on LinkedIn today, we are going live across channels. So bear in mind what you say about Mr. Musk.
Actually, I think Musk needs to get people back because the industry is that way. I mean, you can't really build a car if you're not there on the spot. Now, there are some roles, you take plant roles or operations specifically, or something that requires the team to always be present
Yeah.
anywhere at any given point of time. So those companies or those kinds of works, you cannot say that, yeah, I'm lazy, I'm thinking, I'm just sitting on my sofa and I'll bring you an equation. That cannot happen.
No.
If you have to if you have to be a Rene Descartes, you have to be in the classroom. You have to actually be in front of a notebook all the time, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but if you take some remote works, for example, if you take the kind of work that HUL does or PNG does and all of that stuff, you don't need to be in office all the time. You can
Hmm.
work remotely. I can maybe work much better. My brain will work much better if I'm sitting in a supermarket working on my laptop and just watching the people buy stuff, whether they're going for Domex or whether they're going for Harpic or whatever, right? So if I'm wasting all of my time in office, then I'm not really understanding my consumers. Or if I'm a beer brand, I just send me to Goa. Okay. That might sound like a vacation, and it is a vacation for me, but I am looking at the kind of consumer behavior that's happening.
Yeah,
Uh,
in fact,
Purchase by.
I would argue, and here's an alternative perspective and an alternative story, since this channel is all about storytelling and how it's impact. So this seems to be the dominant story written by millennials and Gen Xers. And perhaps if I have to look at it from a Gen Zers perspective, they might come back and argue like, hey, you know what? We are working all the time, because it's quite likely that work seeps into your mind even when we are supposed to have me time or rest time and stuff like that, because you're not able to really have very clear cut boundaries at home as you were at work. So it really depends upon how you spin it, isn't it? And it really depends upon the way in which you're dealing with it. So it's a really interesting topic, and I don't know what you think about that. Do you think there's some spinning that we can do for some Gen Zers?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like what you said right now. In the COVID period, I was working in the same company 1 year work from home and 1 year work from office, and I can tell you, I did 10 times more work when I was doing work from home, because
Yeah.
there was no time limitations. If I don't, if my mind is not working in the morning, then I can just work till 4 in the night, right?
Yeah.
But the work will get done, and more work will get done. And all the time, even when I'm not in front of my laptop, I'm actually thinking of, okay, how can I make this ad, what kind of music will go into this, and blah blah blah, right? But when I'm in office, there is this mental tune out that happens right when you leave office, because all that day you are filled with all that crap. Most of the times you're just going to office to drink coffee or have a smoking break, or just having 2 hours of lunch. So that time is completely gone. Now, in that time, because I'm already in office, my mind is telling me that these hours are specifically for working. So when I'm going for lunch or when I'm going for my coffee break, I'm really not thinking about working at all.
Hmm.
So if that time gets wasted, then the moment I pick up my bag and go back home, my mind switches off. That okay, office is over now. So let's not think about it. Let's do something else.
I mean,
So as a,
yeah,
yeah.
no, you could argue both ways. I mean, you could argue that the switch off is actually good, and sometimes it helps you regenerate and renew. So there are so many story ideas that are coming in my head if I have to argue generation per generation. But I've just noticed the time. We are beyond 10 minutes. It's 12 minutes, 16, 17, 18, and counting. So we better stop our gabbing and let people go back to work on a Monday morning. Yes, whether you're working at home or whether you're working at work, well, all the very best to you for the rest of your week. As Janavi and I say goodbye.